Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Mark today. Mark's an individual that I got connected to through YouTube, and then he wanted to share a few interesting things that have happened through his life in different locations. So, Mark, welcome to the show today. How's it going, man?
Good, Jeremiah. How you doing?
Doing great. Always a good night when I'm able to talk to someone about their Bigfoot interactions and learn some stuff. And I enjoy that and give you a platform to share what happened to you.
Okay.
So, you know, Mark, I know that you've already said before that we've got a lot of ground to cover. So, you know, I'm going to go ahead and give the mic over to you, and we'll see where we go from here, man.
Okay. But like I said, you interject anytime you like.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right. I got a lot of stories. Well, the main reason I had called this place wasn't to, when I say this place, I mean your podcast. I've been listening to you for a while, and I've been listening to podcasts, Sasquatch podcasts, for a good almost 10 years now. And lately I've gotten bored with a lot of the other ones before I came across yours. And some recently, it's like they'll show a picture of a Sasquatch with a monkey nose, and I will not look at those at all. These things have a hooded nose. They don't have a monkey nose. And if it's got a monkey nose, go to some other podcast and come to Jeremiah. Because he's got pictures of them. They kind of look right. So I can agree with that.
Thank you. I try.
But the main reason I've heard a podcast. Am I allowed to say the number?
Sure. Yeah. Go right ahead.
Okay. Episode 660, there was this lady on. And, you know, I don't call any. This is the first podcast I've ever talked to or even emailed. But anyway, she was so upset about this place where I used to run around when I was a kid that she got walked out of the Garden of the Gods, and she was just terrified. And the whole episode, she couldn't stop being terrified. So I thought, you know, that's happened to me my entire life. I moved there when I was a kid, when I was about 14, 15 years old, with my father and the family, what little he had left. And we lived right at the edge of that, not Garden of Gods, but in that area. I won't say where, but they're just all kinds of experiences. But when I was a kid, I didn't know that. What I knew about Sasquatches was I knew about the Patterson-Gimlin film. And at the time when I was a kid, I thought, well, that's the last crazy wild animal. They're about to go extinct. And yeah, makes sense. They're out west, out in California somewhere, but there's no way that they're still here. Just like there's no bears, there's no saber-toothed tigers and such. But anyway, I used to run around the woods when I was a kid because there was nothing better to do. And so many times, I just can't count them. It got to the point where I just stopped paying attention, that I heard the same sounds that she heard, and they just follow you out. And I've stopped and turned around and yelled at something that's not there. It's like, who are you? Where are you? Why are you following me? I've screamed that out loud on my way home, because I used to do, like, I don't know, 5-6 miles, 1 mile. I used to go down this creek, and I guess I was entertainment for them, because I used to just run down there. And before parkour was a thing, the further down the creek bed you go, the bigger the rocks get, and you have to jump. And it was like playing hopscotch for me, I guess, on a grander scale. And I would jump from one to the other, and I'd get to the end, and I'm just out of breath, and it's about 1.5 miles long. And then when I'm walking back, and this is on an easy day, just when I'm out playing, and then on my walk back, I'm still worn out. But then by the time I get about, I don't know, half mile from home or a quarter or 3/4 mile from home, I hear all these leaves just swish, swish, swish once I get into the leaves after I get out of the canyon. And I get in the leaves and I hear all this. And I even tried the, pretend you're going to take a step and don't, and caught them a couple times doing that. It's like they put their foot down. But when there's no such thing as a Sasquatch, and you have no answer for that, you still have to go about your merry way. And it's like, well, okay, I'll just shrug my shoulders. Same thing with tree knocks. I heard so many tree knocks in my life, I just ignore them now. I don't even pay attention to them anymore. And what I learned about a tree knock, a lot of people think that's a warning. I don't think that's a warning. I think that is kind of an invitation. They let you know, they're trying to let you know that they know that you're there, and you're supposed to pay attention. You're supposed to not respond, but to be aware, and they know what you're thinking. You don't have to respond with it. You don't have to go tear down a tree, make yourself a baseball bat and hit a tree with it to respond. They just want you to know that they're there. And I think it irritates them, the people that walk by and don't understand. It makes them angry. They're not looking for attention necessarily, but you need to know after you walk past this point that there's a possibility of danger. I'm not saying that they're all killers. Some are, some aren't.
Mark, can you take a minute? I'm just really curious. If someone was to ask you what you think Bigfoot is, how do you describe what they are?
I'll tell you what it isn't.
Okay.
It's not a Gigantopithecus.
Yep.
The amount of things that animal would have to do. Number one, they've only found a tooth and part of a jawbone, and then they built a beast around it somehow. That's just not good enough for me. I need more evidence. And from what they found, they said he ate bamboo all the time, just a big bamboo eater. It's pretty hard for an animal to switch from being just a herbivore to going straight to straight meat, like supposedly a Sasquatch. Well, they're an omnivore. They'll eat anything. And it's really difficult in the amount of time that it takes for something to evolve, if that exists even, to get all the way across the Bering Strait from China to get over into the Rocky Mountains and all that stuff or whatever in Alaska and the Yukon, and turn yourself into a Sasquatch that is now planting trees upside down with the roots sticking up in the air. It's a really far stretch for me, so I know it's not that. There's a lot of stories I've heard about, DNA, and people have gathered DNA on these things, but they've traced one side. I don't know enough about it. I'm not an expert. They've traced one side, and I don't know if it's tied to us. And then there's another, and then the other side is like it's nothing on the planet. It's nothing that we've had any experience with. We don't know this particular DNA, so I don't know what to think about that. I don't know if everybody knows and it's shut down. There's a lot of theories out there. They say they're the Nephilim, and that's a possibility after what I've seen of these things. I mean, I've never seen nothing like what I saw. And anyway, but maybe if it has anything, maybe has something to do with some kind of religion or whatever. And there's half the world is trying to shut that down, and the other half is trying to promote the other. So I don't think we're ever gonna find out unless they rise up. I can't imagine 50 of these guys grouping together and then start running through neighborhoods. That would just be a bad thing. What they are, but they're not a monkey. I know they're not a monkey.
Okay.
They sound like a monkey. They act like a monkey sometimes. And I got monkey stories because they did monkey things to me, but they're still not a monkey. It's really, they are a frightful thing. but I didn't know it when I was a kid and when I was younger. Just water on a duck's back. I had bigger and better things to do. One thing I didn't do is like, there's a lot of people on podcasts say they hunt a lot. They've hunted all their lives. They've been out in the woods. They've shot things. They've all that stuff. And like, I never did that. I was always quiet. I tried, like when I was telling you about running down that creek, I was trying to be as quiet as I possibly could, but I never saw many animals. I've had a lot of deers walk up on me. I've had a lot of wild animal experiences, but I wasn't a hunter. People ask me, and I know how to. People ask me, "Do you hunt?" Yeah, I hunt. When I'm hungry. Do you fish? I fish. When I'm hungry. That's the only time I hunt and fish. But I'm very good at it. But I just don't go out and I don't throw a bunch of orange on and sit in the top of a tree about 20 feet high. I just don't, I'm not interested in any of that. So I've always been able to feed myself when I need it. But, there are grocery stores too. I'm not a animal activist. It's not, I don't believe in killing these things, but, I think they're out there for a reason. And that reason is if things, times get tough, there'll be plenty of food out there for me. I don't need to be go out there killing everything every year. And there's 6 or 7 less than there was before hunting season. I just don't do it because I'm not that hungry. So anyway, insofar as what you asked me, I'll try to get back on track here. They're not a monkey. It's a secret, but somebody knows the end of that secret because they're not telling us.
Mm-hmm.
You can't talk to anybody that, they'll make you look. I mean, I got a lot of people that I've tried to tell this to. No, I would call them, I guess, normal people that I would thought would be willing to hear this part of what I saw or experienced, and they'll shut you down immediately, make you look like a fool. They could be a friend of yours, and they'll do it. I've had plenty of those do it. And it's not like I'll never speak to you again kind of thing. It's like they don't even want you to bring it up. Up in Illinois, no one goes out and runs around the woods like I did. No one. I mean, nobody. Nobody I went to school with. I was up there for a good 5 years before I joined the Navy. I had to get out of there because there's no jobs. So I had to join the military. I didn't have to. I just thought I was going to be a Navy SEAL and blah, blah, blah. Next thing I know, I'm in San Diego. So anyhow, everybody up there, all the people that had lived there all their lives, like I said, I only moved there when I was like 14, 15 years old. Probably visited once when I was 12 or 13. I had a house in Tennessee. I was in Tennessee. I lived on a hill in a hollow on a hill, kind of. And I had this house. Somebody had built it. I bought it for a song. I was married. But my dogs were sitting on the porch, middle of kind of the middle of nowhere. You got neighbors, but you can't see or hear them. So I'm sitting on the couch watching TV, and my door's always open. So the dogs just started barking. Hair on their back came up because they were just hanging out on the porch, and they ran straight in the house and ran straight to the bedroom, which they never do or are allowed to do. They come in the house, but they're not going to be sleeping in the bed and stuff like that. But anyhow, I thought that was odd. Like I'm going, and they're barking all the way inside the house. I'm like, well, what are you doing? I mean, it's something that never happens. So I kind of get up. I look around the corner where they went. They're nowhere to be seen. They're hiding under the bed or something. So I go out to the porch, and I got like a 35-watt light on my porch. And I'm looking around, and I look down, and I see the eye shine. And I had this big brush pile where I'd cut all these shrubs away. I had gotten back from Florida, and the shrubs grew to like 20 feet tall. They're kind of shrubs. If you don't trim them, they're going to go nuts. So I had cut all those out, and I made this big brush pile down the hill, not 10, 15 feet off the porch. And so I see these 2 red eyes coming through there. And the first thing I thought was, well, I've never seen red eye shine in my life. I don't know what this is. And so I'm standing there waiting for it to come through because obviously that's what my dogs were barking at. There was a coon but I've never known a dog run from a coon. So all these thoughts are going through my head at the time, all at the same time. So I was like, okay, come through, come through. It looked like it kept coming towards me, coming towards me, coming towards me. And it was an optical illusion. Then I realized I'm not looking at something coming through this brush pile. I'm looking at something that's on the opposite side of the brush pile. Now I can see through that. And this thing's looking right at me. And then I want to describe the eye shine. It's not eye shine. You can see inside the skull of these things. No one's going to believe this, and I don't care. I know what I saw. I know what happened. It looks like if you've got a little campfire or something like that, and the coals are all after all the wood's burnt down, and you see all the coals, and it's swirling around in the same colors. It's inside their head. It's in their eyes, and they're looking at you with that. I'm going, what is that? What is that? And I even said that. I said, what are you doing? I said, what are you doing? And this thing took one step toward me again, and it was so black you couldn't see the body. All you could see was its eyes. It was so black out. There was overcast skies that night. It wasn't raining. It was just overcast. No starlight, no nothing. All I had was that stupid light, which didn't shine into the forest far enough to light up anything. And this thing just kind of, it gave me, and it looked autistic. I have an autistic cousin, and I know what that looked like. And it looked autistic, and it looked off to its right, which was to my left. I had a spring down the hill from there, a water spring, and it was kind of dry at the time. And I think it just came up to get a drink of water. The dogs barked at it and started to come up to the porch by the time I went out there. But anyway, I saw those eyes, and it's not that it's just like a red light, not like a flashlight. There are things swirling inside there, just like it's like spirals. It was amazing. But I still shrugged that off. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what to call it. I wasn't into Bigfoot. I kind of was, I was still had the opinions like, boy, every place I went, because I used to ride a horse from there a couple miles from the house just to feed her, every day or so. Single back or single rein, bareback. I'm kind of an Indian. And anyhow, during that time, that was in the 90s, I think. That was in the 90s when that happened. And anyhow, it just turned its head and walked away. I walked in the house, sat down. I got the dogs out of the bedroom. I had to go back there and calm them down and tell them everything was okay. They finally came back out, but they wouldn't go back out on the porch. They stayed in the living room and watched TV. They weren't interested in going out there anymore. And I wasn't afraid. It didn't scare me. I just thought, well, I'll figure this out later. Because, I spotlighted a lot of animals, and I know what color eyes are. And this is just, to me, was just an animal I hadn't spotlighted yet or seen. And I'll figure it out later. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't scared. But now thinking back, see, this thing was about eight feet tall, because where it was shining through this brush pile was a straight down slope that's just like, you can't walk down it. If you get over that edge, you're going to be on a slide. You're just going to slide down in the mud. So how this thing had walked up to me through that brush pile, it was standing, 10 feet down, 10 feet down, and its eyes, the level of its eyes didn't climb higher. It just kind of stayed straight. And once it got to a certain point, it stopped. And when I asked, what are you doing? It turned and walked away. It was kind of like, it was an apologetic look. It's like, sorry, I just came to get a drink of water. This is what I've come up with later on in life. But I didn't understand it at the time, and I just went about my business.
Mark, do you feel like it understood you when you said that to it?
Yes, absolutely.
Why do you say that?
Because they do it now to me to this day. I just went back to those places I was telling you about when I was a kid.
Yeah. Just
a couple of years ago or a year ago. I'm a mushroom hunter extraordinaire, kind of. Not real successful at it. But, I went back to the same place just a year or 2 years, and they know who I am. They dropped off a bobcat. I had to put a bobcat back. There were 2 coons. That was more wildlife than I'd seen in a lot of years when I was running out there. That was another thing. When I was running around, I'm trying to be as quiet as I possibly can. I was practicing on being as quiet as I possibly could. I'm not out there making a bunch of racket, and that was always my goal. I used to go out walking with friends of mine, and I wouldn't make it a quarter mile, and I'd turn around and take them back home because they can't shut their mouth. I have a rule of like, don't speak, don't talk. When you're out here in the woods with me, you're not allowed to speak.
Right.
Not because I'm hunting anything, just don't say a word. Don't say, there's nothing to comment about unless something, then nothing serious happens. So there's no reason for you to say anything. And I think they have a little respect for that. And they watched me do that as a child. I didn't just run down there one day and have this little exercise. I used to do that constantly because there's nothing, absolutely nothing to do there. Nothing. So it turned me into a wild animal.
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah. When they left the bobcat and the other animals for you, what physical state were those animals left in?
Well, me and my girlfriend had walked down the creek, and like, she knows not to talk, and that's, don't take anybody take offense to that. She's kind of like me.
Right.
So anyhow, we're walking down there. I'm being careful with her, so I'm having to concentrate on making sure she's okay because it's not an environment she's used to. Right? We're not thundering down the creek and like, look at this, look at that. Hey, this is what I used to do here. I wasn't doing that. We're being quiet. We're just walking down there, walking slow. She knows the history of the place, so she was fully aware. No surprise to her. But surprisingly enough, she managed to sprain her ankle. And so we sat down to rest. And I was just maybe a quarter mile away from my objective because there's a bunch of cool stuff at the end. So I'm looking down the creek, and we had 2 dogs with us. So my dog had gone to the top. So you're in kind of like a little miniature canyon. The woods are straight up and down, not straight up and down, but you don't want to get up there and try to climb out of that creek bed. The creek bed is essentially your road and your highway. You're not going to wander around anywhere other than the creek bed. But in places, so this dog comes down with what looks like from off the top of the hill behind me. We had sat down to rest and decided we're going to turn around and get out of there. And my dog comes down the hill with something in its mouth that looks like a squirrel. I thought, geez, don't kill the squirrel. I don't want to deal with no squirrel today. Just don't do it. So I go over there and said, no, because I'm thinking she's getting ready to chomp it, but she wasn't. She's being motherly about it. She had found a bobcat kitten, brought it down to the bottom, and set it down before I even got there. She's like looking at it, what is this? So I could go and tell you how I thought that may have happened, but it was just weird. So I pick up this cat and I go, what is going on? Why is there a cat out here in the middle of nowhere? A stray cat, a stray kitten. Why is that? And I started looking at it. Well, then I found out it's a female. I turned over its back. This thing screaming and raising all kinds of cane. And just like rolling it over. And I'm like, what kind of cat is this? It's a bobcat. Oh, no. Now what am I going to do? If I get caught with this bobcat, I might go to jail or get a fine or something like that. Now I've got a bobcat that's got no mother. What do? Do I take it home, try to nurse it back to health, which I've not had much luck with wild animals. Right. So I took it, climbed up the hill with it, and it was kind of like a stair step thing where water would rush down through there and it washed all the dirt out. So now you're walking up technically steps of, the stones or whatever geologic thing is underneath the dirt. So I'm climbing up this thing and I got the dirt all around my head and this cat's just raising it. So like I didn't want some big bobcat coming around and latching onto my head and getting this cat. It's terrible, scary. But I think I did the right thing. I took it to the top of the hill. I looked around. I tried to see if there was someplace cave or something this thing came out of, but it didn't. So I set it on a rock up, next to a bluff that was at the top of it, and got my dogs away from it and went back down. and told the dogs to leave it alone, and just hope for the best that this thing's screaming and the mother will come back and pick it up. I think she dropped it because my dogs might have scared her off while she was moving it from place to place. I don't know. That's the only thing that seems feasible to me. She was in the middle of moving her kittens, and my dog showed up and she dropped the thing. So I got to the bottom of this thing when I got back, and thank God, I didn't have to fight a bobcat around my neck that day. And I get to the bottom and I look right across the creek, and there's this long stringy tree, and a lot of people see them. They talk about them. It's like, Sasquatches will make a loop of a tree, and I've seen plenty of those in Tennessee, lots of them. Anyway, so I see this little stringy tree, it's like 25, 30 feet tall. And those happen because they're trying to reach up to the light. And, most of them eventually just fall over and die. But this thing had a twist in it. Something with two hands took it and twisted it about, enough to make a scar. And it was only about maybe a year old. Other things there, when I used to run around, I used to ridge run. They used to take cedar trees and they'd twist the top of those. I'd go through there one day, and I'd come back a week later, and there in the cedar tree I had walked past will be twisted up, like some hurricane got a hold of the top of it and just twisted up. And they don't break it off; they just twist them. That happened to me in Tennessee when I'd ride my horse out to where I'd take my horse out to graze. They used to twist cedar trees all the time. And nothing can come through and do that. No windstorm, no nothing. They broke out. I had a bunch of 100-foot tall poplar trees. They snapped the tops out of like 3 or 4 of them. And it's they lined my driveway. They snapped those out and threw them down to the ground. They snapped another one out on another time I was coming back from Florida. I worked back and forth from Florida. I traveled around, and a lot of these memories are hard to remember because I'm not sitting still. I haven't sat still in 50 years. I am now. I'm retired now, and I've sat still for about a year. So anyhow, they snap off trees. They do all kinds of stuff. The other thing I want to talk about and comment about is, my problem with them. Because you hear about, well, they're evil, or, well, they're kind. We leave them peanut butter. It's really, we're habituating, and you shouldn't do that. I don't believe. I tried to talk to my cousin into doing that, and then after I heard a few more videos, I called her back, said, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." I mean, I'm just north of where I saw a dogman track out there where I used to hang out. I mean, nobody's going to believe any of this. And when I was gone in the Navy, that's what happened down in Cadiz, Kentucky. That dogman spectacle that killed some campers. I was in the Navy then, but before that, we were coming up from Tennessee. Me, my little brother, and my dad. I was about, I don't know, 13, 14. And we were going to go deer hunt at this property that my grandpa had just bought, which was, the same area I'm telling you about. We eventually moved up there and lived from Tennessee. But anyhow, we're going down this road from Cadiz, Kentucky. I-24 was under construction, and I think at that time you had to take that detour. So my dad just bought this brand new truck. He's driving like 81 miles an hour down this 2-lane road. It's scary. I don't know why. It's just like, I don't remember getting to Cadiz, Kentucky, but I remember driving through that road, and I don't remember getting to that particular night up to Illinois, but we made it. But a cop pulled us over because he was going so fast. 81 miles an hour on a road like that is a big money grab for, the police or the county, and all he wanted to do is see my dad's license, told him to slow down. He looked around a couple times and he got back in his car. And I've heard I've heard podcasts where people go up in that area and they have mentioned that road. And they say that they saw something go across the road, And then they get a little further and says, "You want to turn around?" And they're like, "No, because there's no way out of this. What are we going to find? If we find something, it's not going to be a good place to stop." It's a scary place. The whole place up there is kind of scary. So I don't know what to say to people. It's like, I don't want you going up there where I stomp around. It's not far from Garter Guys, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a particular area. Those things, I agree with Mr. Elmer. Those things are everywhere, and they're especially everywhere down there. But insofar as my experience has been so far, they're polite as long as you are. Now we have a huge problem. That county's called the deer capital of Illinois. You got everybody from Chicago coming down there at deer season. It lasts about 3 days. They have a big festival in town. I won't say what town. I guess I could. I don't have to be that much of a jerk. Golconda. They have a big deer festival down there every year. But everybody from Chicago comes down there. It sounds like a war zone for 3 days.
Mm.
But there's nobody that goes out in the middle of that and shoots a deer. Nobody. You can hear all the gunfire, and it's coming from the road, the public road, the private properties, and all places you can pull in on the edge, but nobody walks in the middle of that. They just ain't got it in them. It's a scary, scary place. I mean, I could talk all day about how scary that place is.
Do you feel like you've had interactions with them in that area of Illinois as well, or has it been mainly in Tennessee, where we've been talking about earlier?
No, it's Illinois. Illinois got it all started. My problem was I was in denial, I guess.
Okay.
These things don't exist anymore. I heard all kinds of sounds. This wood knock thing. Now, I listened to a podcast because wood knocks make no sense to me. Don't tell me that you're walking through the woods and all of a sudden you hear a wood knock. Well, that would require a Sasquatch to be standing there all day or all week or all month waiting for you to walk by to hit a tree with a stick that he just automatically comes up with it. We know they don't walk around with clubs in their hand. Well, we don't know for sure, but they don't need clubs. That's another thing. They don't need clubs. They don't need weapons. If they are an evolved species, they decided to evolve into something that doesn't need anything but themselves. It's the most awesome thing when you think about it. But anyhow, there's no Sasquatch is going to stand there with a stick in his hand, just happen upon you crossing his path and then smack a tree. They're not going to stand there. They're not going to snap a limb off and then snap the other end off until it's hard enough, because every stick you pick up around a tree is a dead stick. And if you hit it, it just sounds like, it's not going to make much noise, not enough for you to hear it. So I was listening to one podcast one time, and it finally made sense to me. They can make that sound with their tongue.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that, because if you're going to instantly, and if it were the case that you were able to surprise a Sasquatch, the first thing he would do is stop in his track and make that sound and let you know, if you're not listening, you should be, that he's close by. It could also be, in my opinion, an invitation. It's also letting you know that we know you're here. So far, so good. Don't do anything stupid. But you are passing the point of no return. If you're aware of it. But see, now I'm aware of it. Back then I wasn't. I heard so many tree knocks, I just ignore them. Thinking, well, maybe this tree smacked against another one. As I'm walking through, a little breeze comes by and you got two trees that are tangled up and they just make that noise constantly. I don't know. And that's what I would always experience. But, that's not the case, because I would also look at the top, after I would hear something like that, I would, and have that opinion. And I had that opinion when I was a kid. I would look up as I'm walking through for about, at least 50 or 100 feet, because it's that close to me. It wasn't like 6 miles away, and I'm looking for the trees that are rubbing against each other. They're not there. They're never there. Never, not one time. I heard so many, and now anytime I hear it now, I just shrug my shoulders and I just keep on going, because it's not a threat. I don't take it as a threat.
Are there any other sounds that you're hearing out there as well?
Yeah, in South Carolina, they come down here. We came here from Florida and was camping out in National Forest, and there was this two Sasquatches It was a boy and a girl. I wouldn't say, well, you could say male and female, but they seemed to be young because they were out having a good time. And they start screaming at the dogs. They'll yell directly at the dogs, and then the dogs would start just raising all kinds of miles around, and they just kept messing with them. And then they tore up a tree, and I heard the the boy Sasquatch yelled, and then the female was down in the canyon. See, from my years out in the woods, I can kind of see through the dark, kind of. It's nothing special, but I can see what direction something. Especially it's going to make that kind of noise. I know which direction they're looking. I know how big it is. I mean, deer, whatever, anything close by, I'll be able to figure it out. I don't know, and we hear them all the time. I don't go. I haven't been outside, technically, for a while because I'm trying to heal from some injuries that have occurred over time. Anyhow, so they do it out here too. So after we got out of the campground, and then I went down the next day. I went down that road where we were camping, and there was this tree just torn all to shreds and leaning up against the wall of the other trees that were on the side of the road. And I was like, what did that? It wasn't something that dropped off, got cut off. It was like stripped, had one strip through it, looked like, but no lightning hit it. There was no storm that came through. There was no wind that tore it up. It just it was skinny, but it was long and big kind of at the same time. And it's like, that's exactly where I heard the noise. That was the night before, last night I heard that. And it was just really funny. And they love messing with dogs. And that's my next story. It's like after we got out of the campground, after I'd come up here, I'd gotten a job because COVID and the company I worked for went out of business 2 months before COVID. Then COVID hit, and then I'm stuck in Florida. Finally, I found a job in South Carolina, so we moved up here, but we just went camping because not really good housing much up here. So finally, we found a place in the country 120 days later after camping. It's perfect. And it wasn't long after that, I heard Sasquatches messing with the dogs up here, and there's a lot more dogs. There's a lot of neighbors around, but you can't see them. It's around a lake. There's not many water sources here, so they're going to be here if they are here. So what we would hear is these dogs just going crazy, going nuts. And so what I do is I'll bark back. I'll tell the dogs to shut up. I'll bark at the dogs, not bark like a dog, but I will sound like a Sasquatch, a mean one. If they don't shut up, I get a little meaner, and I get as mean as I have to get until all of them across the country try to shut up because I can't stand barking dogs. I just can't deal with it. I don't like a dog that just barks constantly. My dogs aren't allowed to bark unless something important is going on. I don't have that. And then when you got a whole neighborhood, not a neighborhood, but a countryside full of dogs barking at the same time. And the thing I was telling you about before, I can tell when the dogs are barking and what direction they're barking at. And then it kind of points out where this is, and they'll all point straight to the perpetrator. And I think the reason they do that is because they want all the dogs to make all that noise so they can come and raid whatever they want to raid, and no one hears anything except dogs barking. I think they use those dogs to their advantage. They did the same things to the coyotes when I lived in Tennessee. Coyotes used to yip and yap and yap, and there'd be like 50 of them. Why in the world would a pack of 50 coyotes, you're lucky to see 2 or 3 or 4 at a time if you ever see them, 50 coyotes all rounded up, and then you listen up the hill a little further and you hear another big coyote. And you think, back then I thought, well, that must be the king coyote. Well, the king coyote was a Sasquatch running. There's all kinds of running them through the mountain, getting ready to eat one of them. And they're all gathering up and hoping, strength in numbers. There's all kinds of rock piles off the side of my property. I had a house at 16 acres there on the side of a mountain. There was no neighbors. There was a neighbor, there are neighbors, but, I had a whole, 20, 30 miles out in front of me. I could just go and explore anytime I wanted to and not cross the street. And there's stone rock piles out there that make no sense to me. There were people that lived on the side of that mountain. You'll find their foundations or maybe their chimneys. They were close by the house, but the places all these rock piles are, there's no reason to think you could even, cut all the trees out and plant corn in it. It was just stupid. Maybe they're Indian graves. I don't know. There were some that were like cone shaped. It wasn't just like a rock pile, you'd see, 8 feet long, 3 feet high, 4 feet wide. There's plenty of those. And then there's others that are just like stacked up like a cone. Strange things. Just, I see strange things everywhere. I mean, not that I'm not making them up. I see them and that's what I see. And what are they? I don't know.
And was that at Tennessee?
What else?
In Tennessee?
That was in Tennessee.
Okay.
Did I tell you about the owls?
No, not yet. No.
Oh, okay. The owls. After the eyeball thing, the red eyes, after that, it wasn't long. It was the same year in the same spring. And that was, see, I'm trying to put this together because, it's so long ago. And I have to say, was that the same year? Was it a week ago, a week before? Anyhow, so this owl goes out and starts hooting. So I get out on the porch, the same porch, and I start hooting back at this thing. And I'm pretty good at it. And so I'm hooting at this owl, and I'm hooting this owl. And then I realize that this may not be an owl. It's giant. It's huge. All I can see is, just past the, it's just a wall of darkness through the woods, middle of the night, about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. This thing's hooting. I'm hooting back. I'm having a good time. And I'm sitting there thinking, I think I'm going to walk up there and see what that is. And I was about to take a step off the porch, and another one off to my left at about 45 degrees did the same thing. Started hooting too. So now I've got two of these things hooting. So I'm hooting at both of them. I decide to back up. I put my foot back on the porch, and I think these can't be owls because they're too big. They sound like they're 6 foot tall. Now I've listened to owls before. I know what an owl sounds. I've been in the woods plenty. I know what a normal size owl sounds like. These things were just way too loud. You could feel the vibration from these owls hooting. Then they just, one shut up and the other one shut up, and I shut up and I went in the house. But there was no way I was going to go out there and see if I could get them, out of the trees or get a look at them. They were just too big. I've heard a lot of stories about that. But I had the other thing gave away was like at the end of an owl call, when you hear a real owl,
Yeah.
It's always a hoot hoot to you. These things would growl at the end of it, and that's when that was the dead giveaway for me. But still, at this time, I didn't think Bigfoot still existed. And then when I told you about those trees getting snapped off, that happened about probably 3 or 4 weeks later. All those trees were in my driveway and they just snapped everything off the top.
So
maybe they got mad. Maybe they got mad at me because I was, technically mocking them. I don't know.
Mark, I wanna make sure I'm on the right page. So you had the owl thing happened after you had the visual with the one standing there with the swirls, and you still were not 100%.
Still didn't put 2 and 2 together.
So what
is that? What you're asking?
Yeah, what pushed you over then?
Podcasts.
Okay. So
I was raised in a family. If you brought up anything like that, told any stories like that, they would make you pay for it. You don't bring it up. Don't talk about it. That doesn't exist. That's crazy. So I was stuck with that in my brain. I'm not stuck with that anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why it's taken me so long to come around. It wasn't like I'm an automatic sold enthusiast. I was just telling my girlfriend, it's like, a lot of people go out in the woods, they hear a tree knock and they stop in their tracks and they turn around, they go home. I just ignored them. I've heard, I can't even count how many of those I've heard. And I just ignore them and I just keep on going. That's stupid. I mean, if I knew there were Sasquatches in, I'd stop my tracks. I would have went around, turned around, and went home.
Sure.
But I didn't know. I just thought they were all dead. I didn't think they existed. I knew they existed in the past.
Right.
I believed it thoroughly. I used to sit out when I would ride my horse out there and let her eat, and I'd look across the countryside, down the mountain and down the grassway under the power lines where we were all sitting and where I was sitting, and just wishing to see one. I always dreamed of these things. Just walk out of the side of the woods, just let me see the top of your head, and I'll be happy. But it never happened. In the daylight, never saw one in the daylight. Or if I have, I've blocked it, and I'm not ready to address it yet. I'm not sure.
So, the one time that you were able to see one, the one that you said looked autistic, was that one interaction that we've talked about. Were there any other interactions after that, or?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, other than just hearing them constantly and knowing where they're at. No, I don't have any sightings other than that one, and that was sighting enough for me.
Sure.
And that's scary enough for me not to want to go out in the woods again. Just like Elmer, you asked him if he still hunts. He said, "No, I gave that up. I don't hunt. I don't fish. I just stay home." And I mean, what he experienced is enough would keep me out of the woods too. I would never. I mean, him seeing that calf pulled in half. I haven't had. Well, I actually down here where I live now, like a year ago or so, I found a deer that all the skin was pulled off of it, and it wasn't during deer hunting season. Found that on the side of the road.
Did it have its legs still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nobody took any meat off of it. There was nothing. It was just tore apart. But it had been in the woods for a good 5 or 6 days, and part of it was starting to dry out. It wasn't like a fresh kill. But I found this thing because I saw some dogs run off the top of a hill out the end of my road where I live, and I got out and looked around. It had a piece of meat or skin in its mouth, and I was like, "What is that?" So I got out and I climbed up on the hill and then smelled the death, and then I went, "Wow." The only time I've seen something like that happen is like I know a lot of people, and even my family, I think they used to do it sometimes, is you cut it a certain way and you tie a chain to the skin and you just pull it behind a truck, and the thing's tied to a tree, and you skin it real quick. But, it usually takes the legs off. It makes a mess if you don't cut it right. It's just like, but this thing was pretty much intact. No one had, not a rib was missing. Coyotes hadn't been chewing on it. It was just there. And I'm like, what would do that and why? Because even if a human had done that, why is he going to go to the trouble to strip the skin off, not take a back leg, a front leg, nothing? Nothing was missing from this deer. So I found that very odd. I'll eat, I don't think I've eaten any roadkill, or have I? I'm not sure. Oh, got another story. We were heading down to Florida, and there's a viaduct in between here and Savannah. Can't tell you exactly where. It's on I-95. And we had been through there like a couple times, back and forth to Florida. And I always looked at that place, and I thought, boy, would that be a good place for a sauce? Because right where the viaduct is, it starts the swampy areas down there towards Savannah. And so I thought, well, you look around and think, well, that'd be a great place for a Sasquatch to be running around. About the third trip down there, we hit a wall of the biggest stink you could ever imagine. And I'm telling you, it was a mixture of skunk, garbage, dead animal, burnt tires of some sort, burnt something, just with the worst stink. And this is coming from a man that's been actually skunked in the face a foot away from my face by an actual skunk. This was 10 times worse than it had that happening to me. It was horrible. Me and my girlfriend were just started screaming, "What is that smell?" It's not a paper mill. I don't want to hear anybody saying, it's probably those paper mills down there. I lived in Charleston when I was in the Navy. I had to deal with paper mills every day. You never got used to it. This was 5 times worse than that. It was horrible. So, I mean, it just unmistakable. It couldn't have been anything else. Couldn't have been. My my sightings are smells, hearing things, stuff like that. But my sighting, to me, with the red eye thing, is just as good as seeing this thing in broad daylight. I don't need to see. I don't need to see one in broad daylight. I don't need to make up any stories that I have seen one in broad daylight. I mean, there's particular areas, like when I was running around with my horse and stuff in Tennessee, there's little cubby holes and little things you go into. And it looks like they have their own biosphere. And then you get this really spooky feeling about you shouldn't be in here, and you're told to leave. And I've always gotten up and I've left. You can be out gathering stuff in the woods or something, then all of a sudden something will happen, like a wall gets in front of you and says, it's time for you to go now. And I said, really? She says, yeah, it used to happen to me down there when we were camping. I said, well, I've had that happen to me my entire life. I just, I don't care if it's 50 feet away. I'm not going to go get it. It's like you get told it's time to go. And if you pay attention enough, I guess you'll get along with these critters just fine. A lot of people don't pay attention. I worry about those that come up missing. I worry about people that, call these things cannibals. Well, the only way you call them a cannibal is if they're related to us, number one. So somebody needs to prove to me that they're an actual cannibal. But I think the way that they treat us is the way we treat our chickens. If you got like 5 or 10 chickens, they're out in your yard pecking around. Well, eventually, one of them's going to wind up in the pot in the oven. It's like we love them. We even give them names, but eventually, when that hen stops laying eggs, she's going in the oven. And I think that's kind of the way they may be looking at us. They like us as long as we don't mess up. Maybe we don't do this. Maybe we get there too many times. It's like time to wring the chicken's neck. I've heard a little too many stories about, finding bones in caves of eating humans that just recently disappeared. I don't know whether those are, true or not, but it makes you have to wonder, because they're not in any hurry to sit down across any table from us and negotiate about nothing, about anything. I think even our own government can't handle these things. I think that's why they've made all these national forests, so give them a spot to where they can go live, and the rest of us idiots don't go invade or settle or habitate. Gatlinburg's a good example of that. There's too many things going on in the Smokies.
Yeah.
I won't walk around the Smokies. I'll go to that creek that's going east to west towards Maryville. But that's the only place I'll play around in the Smokies. I've just known that. I didn't even know people were disappearing then. I just always had a feeling there. I'm not a scared of anything kind of guy. And I just knew how to act, I guess. I just knew not to go do this, don't go do that. I mean, well, one thing happened to me. I was driving down toward Gatlinburg from the top of the mountain out of Cherokee, and started seeing Indian graves or rock piles, and then I smelled a bear. That's enough for me. I don't need to get in some hollow back there and come up against a 500-pound black bear. You want to understand, they're not very friendly. You can't talk them out of hunger. So I just never, but I mean, that's what I know now. I didn't know that then, but just the atmosphere kept me from doing anything stupid in the Smokies. So when you start, like they built Gatlinburg, and when you start pinning these people into a certain area, the only thing they can do is strike back. What happens if you're sitting on your front porch and something comes out of the woods and just starts taking and eating everything, garbaging up your front yard, and doesn't even recognize you're sitting there? What are you going to do about that? That's kind of what's going on with them, I believe. Don't get out there and do anything stupid. And if you get away with it, good for you, but don't do it twice. Don't do it 3 times. There's just bad things can happen.
You're talking about Bigfoot specifically, right?
Yeah.
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 Do you think people should put out any type of food for them if they know that they're in their area?
That's a tough one. It's a yes and no. I would put out enough to just to let them know that I'm aware that they're there, and I appreciate they're there, because they're good guard dogs. They're awesome guard dogs. Nothing's going to come around your property if they're sleeping outside in the woods just right on the edge across the fence. Nothing's going to mess with you, but don't overfeed. If you start feeding them and feeding them and feeding them, I'm going to use videos, for example, that I've heard. There was a woman that did that. I don't know where it was. I think it was around North Carolina or something. And she went away for a week. And when she got back, they had completely destroyed her entire property because she wasn't there to feed them every day. They had to bring in a professional team to come in there and shoot that thing. It was like 10 feet tall, big giant thing. And since he didn't get fed that week, she had went off to visit somewhere, and she came back and destroyed her place. They had to calm that thing down. And even the team that they brought in couldn't handle it. They had to call a bigger team that, even more, if you want to believe this kind of stuff, I don't know what's totally and completely true. I'm not espousing that it is, but I can surely go along if something's, that big. And I know they're everywhere. What makes me angry the most, I think, is, it's some kind of stigma to speak up about this, to say that, we believe in it, or even the people that know about it. It's like Elmer, he knows, I know, but, people look down on you and say it doesn't exist, which, puts us in a category of people being insane and need to be locked up in a straitjacket on. And I'm not willing to accept that. I'm not, especially when I know the way they act by not giving up information. Oh, here's one. That game warden that Elmer had talked to, he just strictly told him, just don't do it. Don't do it. He wasn't trying to protect the Sasquatches. He knows something above him that has told him he doesn't want the heat. This, he's saying, this is my neighborhood. Do not shoot that thing, because if you do, it's going to come down on me. That's what that meant. It'll come down on him too, but it's going to come down on him first, and he don't want to hear that music. It's a fearful, frightful thing for the government to come after you. How many podcasts have I heard? It's like, next thing I know, there's a black helicopter, or the men in black show up, or the next thing I'm dealing with a bunch of FBI agents making me sign an NDA. I'm not fearful of that necessarily, but I got a big mouth, Somebody's throwing up.
The area in Tennessee, have you ever talked to your neighbors to see if they're experiencing things?
Yeah, there was one time my neighbor Bill, he was a good friend of mine. He lived down the hill. I used to ride my horse through the woods from my house down to his. People thought that was crazy, it was just normal to me, but they thought, wow, that's crazy. Yeah. So I used to ride my horse down there. We'd drink beer and sit around, hang out and all that stuff. He was an old hippie, but he got drunk one night and claimed he went down the road and claimed he saw a buffalo. He said it was right beside my truck. I'm only doing 10, 15 miles an hour, and I got a buffalo walking beside me out my window. And I couldn't figure it out. It's like, how would a stray buffalo? He says, it's just like, buffalo when they shed their hair in the wintertime. It was all hairy and all matted up. And it was walking on all fours. He mentioned that. He said he just kept saying it was walking on all fours. I don't know why he kept saying that. He said, maybe it was a Sasquatch. And I even talked to him. I said, there's no way, Bill. There's no Sasquatch running around here. He said the thing was it was huge. It was as big as my truck. It was tall. The back of it, I'm looking at the back of it. But he didn't see the front of it. So just where he had seen this thing, it was right at this little short bridge, small, low bridge that goes over a creek, a dry creek. And if you make a left right there at that thing and walk about a mile, there's a huge, giant sinkhole cave system. I've been in it, got in it, crawled in it, big enough for one of them things to get in it and just live there. And there's another cave down the road to the right. I've gotten that cave when I was younger. And so there's plenty of, if you wanted to hide, there's plenty of places for the big thing to hide. So I went down to my other neighbor, which was a friend of ours, and I kind of sat for a couple of days thinking about, well, maybe he's right. Maybe it is a Bigfoot. And I brought it up to him, and he went monkey nuts on me and told me to shut up. Don't bring that up again. I don't want to talk about it, and I don't ever want you to bring that up to me. Just don't talk about it. I said, what's the matter? It's not a buffalo. I'm just talking about it's not a buffalo. Maybe it is a Bigfoot. He says, that's enough for me. That's enough. That's all he'd say. And I couldn't talk to him about it ever again. It was don't bring us up, don't bring a subject up ever again. But he lived down right there in the valley, not not a mile away from where he saw this thing. But he was just not even wanting to hear the possibility of the theory of maybe, because we know it's not a buffalo. Oh, Bill's just drunk. He was just drunk. No, that ain't what it was. Sorry. It wasn't my sighting. That's just the story. That's how. And that was the end of that. Bill died not long after that, probably about a year after. But, yeah, Bill was a drinker, but he wasn't a hallucinator. I know that for a fact.
Oh, what an interesting area. Do you ever hear anything else weird in the woods besides the sounds that you're attributing to Bigfoot?
Well, any other things weird? Oh, let me think. That's a curveball. Yeah, but I can't remember what they are. I'm trying to just rack my brain with what I'm dealing with. But no steel doors closing.
Okay.
Actually, it's nothing I heard, but it's what I saw. When I'm sitting there with that back when I was sitting there with that Bobcat, I told you I had an objective that I wanted to get to. So while I'm dealing with this Bobcat, my girlfriend's got a sprained ankle, and and my dogs aren't giving me a problem necessarily. And then that twisted tree is right across the creek from me. I'm looking down, and what should be darker black, I kept seeing this. It looked like there was a white building sitting there. I'm like, what is that? Why is there shouldn't be anything white, and it's huge. And it's sitting there just like you could just barely see it through the trees, but it's solid white. The rocks aren't going to be white. There's nothing there that should be white, but I'm dealing with quite a few issues there. I keep glancing down there to see what that is. I'm glancing around, what I'm going to do with this cat. So once I got the cat down, I thought about going. Then we just decided, no, I'll see it some other time. But it was just too big. I had been to that place way too many times. There's no such thing as anything being white. There's no building. There's no road to anybody to carry anything out there. It was just huge. I just know there was like a white wall down at the end of where I wanted to get to, and I didn't get to go see what it was. Call it a legend, call it what you will, but I just found that so odd. It still to this day bothers me. Because I've been out there 100 times, and there's nothing white out there. Stupid. There's no way anybody brought anything white out there. As far as other sounds, no, I don't think really, not really. I may remember something later, but right now, off the top of my head, no. Nothing spooky, scary. I think there are dogmen there, but I think it's kind of like from what I understand, they don't like each other much. They're in Kentucky, across the river, and I got the guard dogs that I got, which I'm happy about. Right. I don't want to deal with no dogman.
Would you rather deal with one over the other?
No, I'll deal with them both.
Mm-hmm.
I think dogmen just like to scare people. I don't think they really feed on us necessarily. I think they just like, I think it feeds them. Our fear feeds them. How bad they can scare the crap out of us. Because there are a lot of disappearances, but not necessarily deaths, not the government's going to, admit to. So Who knows? I know they eat people. I know that. So I guess I shouldn't be so not afraid. But I'm not afraid of either one of them, actually. The only problem I would have about dying is that people will have just come behind me and clean up my mess. That's what I'm trying. I mean, all the things I left behind, it would be on them. I'm not afraid of these things necessarily. I'm just afraid of how many people I'd be putting out if I got eaten by one of them. I don't mind dying. Dying's easy. I had a wife that died in my arms, and she came back and told me what it was like up there. So I'm well versed about what happens after you die, and I ain't scared of none of it. It's just like you just take a big short nap. That's all. Just clonk me on the head and have a rib or two.
I'm sorry that
Enjoy.
you lost your wife.
That's okay. I got another girl.
Gotcha. Did that
Had two
happen?
more kids.
Did that happen before?
I took her there. I took her there one time, as a matter of fact, and we were down at a place where I used to go see in pretty close to the same area, and I'm telling her a story about the history of the place and where we used to come out and hang out and do all that stuff, and trees start shaking at the top of the ridge on the other side of the creek, and there was really not necessarily any wind, and it was only like three trees, and they kept just like swaying and back and forth, and you look up and down the ridge from one to the other, it's just these three trees, and they just kept interrupting my story because it was making noise. So I looked up and I just yelled up the hill. I said, "I'll be with you in a minute," and it stopped. Wind wasn't blowing real hard. There was a little, 3-5 mile an hour breeze. And she said something like, "What's going on up there?" I said, "I don't know. Happens all the time." And then we left. I remembered that the other day. I know all this sounds crazy, but it's all horribly true. I'm sorry.
To me, it's not crazy at all, because I hear versions of this every single day, and it's absolutely wild how many people are experiencing things like this all across the US, and people don't realize that, but I hear them every single day. It is absolutely wild.
My only hope, not my only hope, I have many hopes, of course, but insofar as this regard, I want people to imagine themselves as a Sasquatch, what they have to deal with, how cold it gets, how they don't have shoes, how they don't have blankets. And so, why are you going to get upset if the last thing you need to worry about is running them out of the spot that they had picked that day to survive. And all of a sudden they got to pick up and run and go somewhere else. I want people to start thinking about what they're doing before they go out and start messing with these things. They need to leave them. They don't have to leave them alone. They can walk out there, just keep your mouth shut and don't say anything. Don't make any noise. Don't make any racket. Don't bring any friends. Well, bring a friend or two if you need to, but they need to start imagining what it'd be like if it were them sitting on the side of that ridge and having to sleep outside and all that stuff. It's not that they're suffering. They evolved into that. Like I said, they don't need weapons. They don't need fire. They're perfectly fine with the way they are. The only problem they have with us is we make too much noise, and they're not allowed to be seen by us. They have to run from us. But there comes a time where I think another thing, I think that they're not only duplicitous, they're quadplicitous. If it's an easy kill, and if they can know on their own that there are no witnesses and you'll never be heard or spoke of again, they'll take you. Never put yourself into that position. I mean, the things I do, that I used to do, I would say, are dangerous enough. Just don't do that on a regular, unless you have established a relationship with them, unless you know that you're going to be safe. but there may come a day, even with me, they'll just come, they'll snatch me up. They've had enough. Time for supper.
Do you feel like you've established a relationship with them
Absolutely.
on? Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. See, I make sure, not to wear deodorant or anything like that when I go out in the woods so they can smell me. I want them to remember, because my scent hasn't changed since I was a little kid. It's still the same. And so they can smell me from miles away.
How often are you talking to them out loud, do you find?
Well, not lately. I've shut myself in the house for a year. Well, all the time. I still do, but you can call that person a crazy person easily. I believe I'm in touch with them right now. I know. I just know it. I mean, to me, so far I'm in negotiations with them.
Okay.
Because I got something I got to come up. I got something I got to come up there and do it. It's in their territory, and they ain't gonna like it.
How do you feel you're connected to them?
I'm part Indian.
Yeah.
I'm connected to them because I think that I was entertainment to them. There's another thing I did, like at the bottom of that creek I'm telling you about, at the top of that, there's a bluff. And I used to, when I get done running, I'd go up, climb that bluff, and get on top of that. There'd be huckleberries up there and stuff to eat. And off to the right, you can see for miles from the top of that bluff. And off to the right was a hawk's nest, about 70 feet, maybe 100 feet in the air, growing in a big old tree. So I devised a way to tie up a bunch of binder twine, hay bales. We had a lot of horses, so we had binder twine everywhere. So I devised a way to make my own rope and throw a rock over the limb with a small string that tied to the big rope that I had made out of this binder twine. And it was double, so I had to throw the rock over the limb, then you pull the string, which pulls up the rope, which brings the other side down, then you twist that together, and you climb the tree to get to the hawk's nest. I'm sure that was an entertaining day for them, because I did that. And it was high. It was like, I couldn't get the rock over the limb. That's how high the limb was. And I'm good at throwing stuff, baseballs, you name it. And it took me a good 25, 30 minutes. I had to sit down and take a break from throwing that rock just to get over the first limb of that tree. Finally got it when I was about to give up, and I pulled the thing up, and then I twisted around, and I climbed that 50-foot rope. It was high. I'm telling you. It's in a big tree, and climbed up and saw the little chickens. And instead of taking one, I decided just to leave them alone, and I climbed back down, and that was my exercise for that week. So if there's any Sasquatches around there sitting there watching me, making rope, not bringing a rope, making a rope just to get up to go look at these chickens, these red-tailed hawk babies, and they were there, I decided I'd just turn around and go back. No reason whatsoever. Hey, have you seen pictures of Garden of the Gods, like good pictures of them? Have you seen that pedestal? Have you seen that pedestal out in front, in the middle of it?
I've seen pictures of the rock formations, but
well, you've seen the camel head, right? The camel head. That's it's. As far as I know, that's its claim to fame. There's a camel head.
Is it called? Oh, I'm looking at it right now. So it's called Camel Rock.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Can you see that? Can you see like a pedestal down below that?
Yes.
It looks like about. Yeah, I jumped off of that over towards the camel head when I was in the Navy. I got a picture of it too, and so it's a bit wide there. That's how crazy I used to be.
You weren't kidding around.
No. And my reason for doing it was I was going to ask my girlfriend to marry me that day, But I just left it up to God to see, well, if I shouldn't marry this woman, why don't you just kill me? So I jumped out the rock and told her to take my picture as I'm doing it. And we're out there with our friends and stuff. Yeah, go ahead. That sounds like a good idea.
Well, I'm
It
glad you
was a
made it.
fun day.
Glad
Yeah,
you made
but
that jump.
I twisted my ankle really bad, but wound up marrying the girl.
Well, there you go. There you go. Good stuff. Mark, you've been through some really interesting stuff. It sounds like you're still going through it.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
get started. I'm trying to get started back up again. I haven't
Okay.
finished living my life. My body's just a little broke down from all the things I've done. I used to live on a boat in Florida, out on the hook, not at a marina, just like rowing, sailing, riding a bicycle 12 miles a day, and that's if nothing went wrong to get to work, come back. It's like I've really there's a lot more to that, but it's not Sasquatch oriented necessarily.
Right.
Or maybe the occurrences that happen to me in Florida haven't popped in my, -2 head yet, and I'll figure it out later.
Well, sometimes connections get made later on in life, and things might continue to happen as well on the
Yeah.
property that you're at. But I mean,
Oh, I sang 2 songs to a bobcat in Florida one night. That was crazy. Driving to go to, I guess I may have been on a beer run or I needed cigarettes. I don't know. I was living on a boat, so I got to my bike in this park that I lived in. Get down the driveway or going down the sidewalk out of this park, and there's a giant bobcat laying on the sidewalk, just looking at me. So I slid my foot to a stop. I'm about 10 feet away from this thing. So I'm not going anywhere. The bobcat's not going anywhere. It's not looking unfriendly, but it's looking at me like, what you got for me now? So I sat there and I sang 2 songs to that bobcat. Finally, it left.
what were the songs?
Songs I wrote. I write
Okay,
my own
cool.
songs.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So anyhow, it was kind of funny. I felt like Snow White.
Hey, maybe you saved that bobcat.
Oh, I had another one in the house in Tennessee where I saw that Sasquatch. I had this wren that used to come in and wake me up every morning. It finally got to the point it would get in my chest and bark right in my face to get me awake. It's like, God damn, you get out of here. It's like I felt like Snow White then too.
That's 2 Snow White things. So who knows what's
Yeah.
next? But don't go eating any apples, I guess. But
No, stay away from those. I don't have the teeth for it.
there you go. Mark, keep us in mind if anything else continues to happen
I
once
will.
you get back out there. But thank you for sharing what you've experienced so far. It's been very enlightening. I think a lot of people are gonna learn some things from it.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I don't want anybody like this calling people crazy stuff needs to stop.
It does, yeah. I agree.
And it's like I'm not here to lie or promote. I'm not calling the next guy to tell my story.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to get this out and just get it over with so I can move on with my life necessarily.
Gotcha.
I'm not looking to make a podcast, get famous by any means. Just I want nothing to do with it. But it has to, I just gotta, I don't know, maybe set the record straight, maybe calm some people down, maybe tell some people they need to calm down. There's just so many variables to this thing. It's like when you ask me what do I think it is, you can't just call it one thing.
Right.
There's just too many things going on. You have to recognize what you're dealing with. Like I said, you can go out west, you're going to find a completely different animal. Maybe maybe they've just put their foot down and said, this is our territory, and we have a 0 tolerance policy. There's a place in Alaska, they wiped a town out like I think twice because they just didn't want them there. So ran them out. Killed a bunch of people. So some have 0 tolerance, some are kinder than others. You always have to know what you're dealing with. So that's why I say we can't just call these things one thing and, look at them in I don't know, one, you know, in one view. This is what they are. You know, they're not a gorilla.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
You know what to do.
Yeah.
You know what to do with a gorilla. You know what to do with they all do the same thing. They're not a polar bear. They all do the same thing. These things don't do the same thing. Anyway, so sorry for running on. I know you'll probably have to edit that out, but that's just what I think.
Well, Mark, I appreciate you coming on, man. If there's anything I can ever do to help out, don't be afraid to, you can send me an email, but I appreciate you sharing your thoughts tonight, man.
All right. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. I will. If I have any questions, I'll give you a bother, but probably don't count on it.
All right. Sir.
I'm going to go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go find out now that I know everything I know. I'm going to go out and I'm going to practically walk up to one of these things because I'm done from them making me look like a fool.
I'd be interested to see how that goes if you do end up doing that. Definitely.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Yeah. I'm planning on going here in about a couple months if I can.
Okay.
So I'll let you know.
All right.
Thanks, Jeremiah.
We'll talk to you later. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good one, Mark.
You too. Bye.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list: the Subtle Lake area of Oregon, Rainbow, Oregon, McKinsey Bridge area, Sweet Home, pretty much that entire area, the north part, if you get what I mean. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one if you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS, and it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.